So we're gonna, oh no, that was a reaction, was it? Or was it record? Oh yeah, we're recording. So I came across this years ago and it was absolutely transformational for me in helping me price up my work. And you know, I don't come from a very business orientated background. And to this day, I would say I'm not brilliant at business, but I have to be financially aware to run my workshop. There's no point running it if I'm going to make a loss and not make any money. And this thing that I'm going to show you, so I'm just going to do screen share. Here we go. Check what I want. So this thing that I'm showing you, it's a free resource and it's called the itool.co.uk. And I don't think you have to be a member of the AN to access it. So I'll send you a link, you just have to register. And what it will do is it will take you through a really fantastic pricing thing online. And I'm not going to do it online because it's a little bit clunky and it takes too long for each page to load and reload. I'm just going to show you the first page. So it's up here, the Artist Fees Toolkit. And then on here, it says calculating the day rate. And then it fills in everything for you. So I've put my name, the date, quotation for work. I've just put test expected annual income after all expenses but before tax. So for today, I've just plumped for some fairly generic figures. And then what you do is you hit this button here, it says calculate. So you'll see that it takes ages. And then I'll just show you how it works and then we'll go on to the saved version that I've done so that you can see that. So, you know, I just thought this would be too painful for the day to go through a whole 18 pages like this. So there we go, calculate, and then you hit next. And it adds all the employer costs and it gives you all, you know, it says if you're self-employed, it's suggested that you use 13.8% as your national insurance value, as this is the approximate average payment that an employer has to make for national insurance. And so it works out all these figures for you. But we're not going to do this because it's too slow. I've gone in on your behalf and pre-filled this in as a rather generic thing, looking at how much, you know, you might charge a day. So I've put here, and, you know, I've just had to plump for figures. I've put expected annual income after all expenses before tax. So I've put, you know, the hoped for figure of £28,000. I certainly never make that, but I always aspire to make more. I mean, I've had some really good years and some rubbish years, but £28,000, nobody could argue if you were, you know, and you can put whatever you feel is reasonable. But I always say don't undervalue yourself too much. And then it tells you, it adds your national insurance contributions here at 13.8, and then a pension contribution at 5%. And I do have a personal pension. I would recommend everybody, especially when you're at the beginning of your career, just set one up, shove a little tiny bit of money in every month. You'll never notice it. I set mine up as soon as I was working for myself. It's not worth very much, but on my state pension, you know, it will make a difference. So just get used to it and, you know, put some money in, go and talk to somebody. So it gives you a total equivalent direct employer's cost. So you're earning the equivalent of about 33 and a bit £1,000 a year. So, you know, it's sort of like a normal income, bearing in mind how super skilled we are. That's nothing, you know, you could see what you know, whatever you want there anyway. So annual weekdays, how many days a year are we going to be working? So we've got that many days, that 5 days a week. And again, these are boxes that you fill in. So I would say I work 5 days a week. I'm definitely a Monday to Friday person. You know, I come into the workshop about 9 and finish, you know, sort of 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So that gives us 260 working days a year. And then annual leave. I'm big on holidays. So you know, they recommend all these figures, you know, these are all within the realm of normal, 25 days a year. Training. So training is an interesting one. You know, again, I've had to make judgments for all of these things, and you can go in and put all your own figures in. But I probably easily spend 5 days a year training, you know, learning a new bit of software or going on a course or, you know, finding the time to learn something new. I think 5 days a year is reasonable. And then research and development. So that's on top of any project specific research and development. I would definitely say, you know, for me, 6 days is probably a normal sort of figure. I probably do more than that because I do stuff in the evenings. I've got a really nerdy streak. And then quotations and presentations, you know, I do quotes and quotes, you know, in meetings, and the job doesn't always pay off. And somehow you have to account for that time. So I put 10 days. Administration, 2 days for doing my accounts every year. And then sickness and related absences on the AN, on this toolkit, it says most people have at least 5 days a year off. So that's 61 days out of those work days you're not working. So that gives you 199 days available a year to work. If you want to earn that much money that we looked at earlier on, it says so 33,000 whatever divided by 199, you need to be earning £167.16 every day that you're working to earn that sort of income. So it's really interesting once you start putting figures on this time, because what it starts to do is value your time. And as soon as you start to value your time, it changes your mindset. So this is without any of our overheads. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through and look at our overheads. So this bit here would be per job. So if you were quoting for a specific job, you could add on this travel, material, subsistence. But I've left it out because we're just looking at a day rate. So it hasn't changed our day rate. But now we're going to come to a part where the costs are really going to add up. So business insurance and professional insurance. So one of the wonderful things about the Artist newsletter, which is now a-n.co.uk, is for your membership fee of about 40 quid a year, you get public liability for up to £5 million. It's the most fantastic thing. And it's worth becoming a member of the AN just for that public liability, because, you know, if you do any work outside, you'll need it. And if you're self-employed, it will cover you. I work as a limited company, so I still have to take out public liability, and it costs me hundreds. But if you're working as a sole trader, and this will cover you, you can go in and look at all the T's and C's and check you're covered. And you can add on things if you want to. So 50 quid a year, it's brilliant. So rent. So just talking to a couple of people, you know, you could say £200 a month is a really low rent. So that's £2,400 a year. So for these figures that I'm putting in now, I think you'll struggle to cut these down if you're going to be realistic. My costs would be quite a bit higher than this in many instances. So for me, we're sort of, you know, we're nearing towards the bottom line of what our costs might be if we're going to be realistic. So I've put rates at £350 a year, electricity, heat and light, £500 a year. I've not put anything for security or maintenance. So that's £3,250 a year for rent, rates and heat. Then I've put mobile phone and communication. So for phone, I've put £300 to cover a landline and a broadband connection. I know many of you use your mobile phones and you don't have that, but, you know, I think that £15 a month for a mobile thing. So, you know, somewhere you're going to be paying, you know, and I think between 300 quid for your technology minimum. And then I've got post and stationery. I spend quite a lot of money on stamps, posting commission agreements off. So I've put £200 for post and stationery. Again, you know, you might spend a bit less, but you might spend more on a mobile contract. Software licenses and consumables. So for years, I was a long-term Adobe user, and I spent £600 a year on my Adobe licenses. I don't use Adobe anymore. I use a software called Affinity. There's Affinity Designer, Affinity Photo, and Affinity Publisher. And so they're the equivalent of Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop, and Adobe InDesign. They're currently on sale at £25 each per program, which is just the most fantastic deal. And the only thing I can't do that I used to do in Adobe is export a vector drawing to something called a DFX file. And again, this is something I'll come on to later. And I have a free program now that does that called Inkspace. So I've gone from spending £600 a year to a one-off. I've literally just changed my systems and rebought the Windows version of everything. It was a one-off fee for the 3 programs of £75, and that's it. There's no further subscription. So, you know, I would say forget Adobe unless there's something very specific that you know you need. If you're looking for some really good value money, I recommend Affinity. So software, consumables, I've put £250 for printer ink because I do loads of printing, and we all know it's more expensive than petrol. So research, books and magazines, you know, I have a couple of annual subscriptions to different journals, materials for research. You know, that's sometimes just messing about with different things in the workshop, you know, the cost of some silicone for silicone molds to mess about, the cost of some plaster. Travel for research, you know, £250 I've put. A couple of train journeys and entry fees into different galleries and museums every year, because I think it is really important to keep yourself open to what's happening around you. Again, courses, I love going on courses, paying for learning. I've put £250 a year, you know, there's always something you have to do. And protective clothing, 1 pair of overalls a year, £50 a year I've put down there. Accountancy, I don't know really what you'd pay for accountancy. I know as a limited company, my accountancy fees are more than 500, but I've put £500 in there. And then advertising, I've got nothing for advertising. Publicity materials, I've put £200. That would cover you getting a few postcards printed and then running a website for your domain name. You're probably looking at around £200 a year for a nice setup. And then equipment, I haven't put anything in for a car. And I run a van, so I run that through my business. But if you don't have a vehicle, you can just hire a van to deliver and pick up jobs and add it on to the cost of your job. Or if you have a car, you can put some figures in here, but I've assumed that everybody here would probably just hire a car for now if they needed one. So I've put a computer 3-year life. I've just literally a week ago received my new laptop. So incredibly expensive. So I put £850 for the laptop and all the peripherals that you need to go with that for a good digital setup. And then printer, I've put £100. I haven't put anything in for a camera because we all use our phones these days and they're just as good. And then studio equipment, I've just put £250 a year. You know, that's not much. You could put much more than that in. So every year, that's just a few extra chisels and bits for me because I'm quite well set up now. And then bank charges. You might not have to have a business account, but I do. And that's about £60 a year for me currently. So my annual, you know, based on these figures, not my figures, but based on these figures, your annual overheads are £7,500 a year. I mean, that's really added up, and you could easily not take any of those overheads into account if you hadn't gone through this process. So your day rate required just to cover your annual overheads, if you're working 199 days a year, is £37.86 a day. Now, once you get that into your head, if you run in a workshop and you're there to work for a day, you're paying almost £40 a day to be in that workshop. So when people ask you just to do something, or can you just do this, or can you just do that, you have to remember it's actually costing you £40 a day to be there, and you haven't even brought any money in.
Yeah,
and for me, that was a fundamental shift in how I thought about running my business when I understood that it cost me
actually had confirmation
every
of something
day
I'm doing this afternoon
to exist. So it says here a total day rate required to cover earnings, direct recurring disbursements and overhead costs would give you a day rate of just over £200, £205. I think that's quite low. I think you could, you know, add those figures and find that your minimum day rate might be higher than that. Because mine certainly is. But what's good about this is it's a really nice way of finding out what your costs are, what you'd like to earn, and how you can get there. And it's a really good start.
Sorry, Charlotte.
Take too long about
There's someone talking. I can hear someone else talking.
Yeah, it's my it's the shared space conundrum.
Ah, right. Sorry, I thought someone hadn't muted.
No, we can't. There's nothing we can do about that. I'm ever so sorry. It's as it is.
Okay. Cheers.
That's all right. But actually, we can. I mean, has anybody got any questions about what I've just been through?
Yeah, I can zoom in.
I've got a question.
But we're
Mhm.
putting
It's
together
about,
the landscape visual impact assessment.
you said
document.
that you have to get separate liability
I
for
won't
a limited company. What kind of,
go into
you
it,
have to get a separate
in too much
liability
detail,
insurance?
but I just wanted to
Well, what
draw
it is the
your attention
AN
to,
public liability only covers you if you're a sole
the,
trader.
um,
So through the same company that offer that free cover, I
This drawing
upgrade
is
my
one
cover. So it's the
just to
same cover,
Great.
focus
but because
on,
I'm a limited company,
briefly,
I have to have it to
as a
cover my
reminder,
limited
really, of the,
company. And, you know, it's a
slightly
pain because it
conflicting,
costs quite a lot more.
um,
It's about 350 quid or
we've
something.
talked to
a
Maureen
year.
about this sort of
Yeah.
special landscape
But if
area
you're a sole trader,
designation.
then the AN will
Which
cover
seems to
you
overlap
for most things. You can go in and read all the small
entire,
print, and you can ring the company and get add-ons
wider
if you
master
need
plan pretty
to.
much
They're
side.
really good value. There's a
But it
couple of
does
other
have
companies offer a similar thing. I don't know if you
issues which
know
are
of
sort of
accessweb.org
pondering, really.
for artists.
Then,
They offer the
within
same
document,
thing,
which is
as does the
draft,
Artists
Linda
Union.
would
I
like
subscribe to all three of
Linda wants
those.
to sort of flag up at this stage.
So the Artists Union I really like, because I like the whole idea of unions, and I think it's 40 quid a year for them.
Yeah,
And
landscape
through that, you
character.
also get the same insurance.
Just to
So,
take you through
but I
some
think the AN offers more
photography
resources for your
here,
money.
but, I think
Thanks.
can you see this?
So I'm just going to go. Oh, go on.
Sorry, can I ask about the pros and cons
There's a
of being a
sort
sole
of
trader
settlement
or not
sensitivity
going setting up
analysis.
a company?
I think
I probably don't have all the
mentions in
answers for
particular
that,
this
but when I set my
ridgeline
company up, I set it up with a friend, and we did a
East
lot of
Rivers.
public commissions together. And just
and Bristol,
because there was two of us,
and
it
it's-
made sense to be a limited
and
company.
it's,
And I've just historically kept it like
sensitivity
that.
of
There's
it
pros and
on the
cons to
horizon line.
both. You know,
So,
my
you
camps
know,
are more expensive.
basically talks about the
Um,
need to.
my insurance is more expensive.
It's advising the planners that there was need to.
You know,
be
but then
sensitive on the
occasionally
organisation of that
that
range
job in Belfast,
because
I
of the
think if I was a sole
consequences in terms
trader,
of the
I wouldn't have
wider,
won that job. There was something about
impact
being a
on the
limited
wider
company
landscape.
that the
So
council
as I go
felt
through
more
the next
comfortable with.
series of
So,
photographs,
you know, if I was setting up again, I doubt I'd go as a
bear
limited
that in
company.
mind
It's
in
just
terms of,
historically, that's how I've ended
concerns
up, and I'm
that
too
you
lazy
might
to
want be
change
thinking
it.
about in terms
I
of
like the
how we,
difference. I like the
um,
separate entity that a limited company has now.
develop the sort of master plan.
So, I mean,
as
it's,
a-
you know,
as a
I probably wouldn't be
concept.
bothered to do it if it was just me.
I've just
But there are
switched
some
screens now, and you might not be able to see
small
all of this,
benefits.
but
What I want to do quickly now
this
then
is where
is
we've been
just
generating
change
a
the screen
series
share.
of what we call view sheds.
Let's see
These
how I can
diagonal
do that.
lines.
I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to share
This is
something
in
else
theory
now.
where the
So,
site would be visible
Just pull it up.
from, based in this instance, on a 14-meter height, highest building, roughly here on the higher part of the site. So you can see it stretches out towards the west primarily. We then run the same
Okay.
thing
I'm
with
going to
the
share something else now.
higher building, 19.5, and you can see the, so for example,
So this is how I
slightly more
price my
visible,
work up.
slightly more intense.
And I'm going to,
in
I've got,
places.
made all these documents
And
sort
when
of
we arrive on
generic,
site,
so that if
we
anybody's
also
interested, I
looked
can
at
send
the
them all to
adjacent
you, and you can
or
just
the
copy and
Grange
paste.
site
I've got a
for the
really
artists to
simple
consider.
commission agreement that I was given
And
years ago that I still
again,
use.
on the two height options.
So this is how I
And you can see
work
that
out
there's a
my
bit of
job.
an overlap.
I've got my
You
time
can see
charges
where
a
you change
day.
height, for
So
example,
these
the
aren't my
intensity
figures.
of
I've just
where
punched
things
something in. So
visible
time
from
charges a
slide
day,
dimension.
£200. That's just for your labour. And then overhead costs a day is 50 quid and a total. So you've got a £250 day rate here a day. And
So
then
what sort of things do you mean by direct recurring disbursements? I know we probably went through them, but what
that
sort
would be
Yeah,
would be
let's just
something.
take a
Say
look at
you were
some of that
hiring
slide
a
and
van
then,
for a week, and
look
every day it
at the
costs you
theory
X
on
amount
site,
of
and
money.
yellow
Or get to have a
is
train
broadly
travel
my
every
take on
day
where
to get
okay,
to the
so the
site.
overhead, really
These
the
options,
workshop
both
and the
sides.
recurring things or anything over and above that, really.
So
that's
I've,
job specific.
so
Yeah,
I've taken
okay, thank
these viewpoints on the basis that they cover
And
most
again,
of
if
the
you go through
scenarios
that
we've been
AN
talking
thing,
about.
if you go through that
we're
toolkit
not trying to cover
online,
every
it
viewpoint,
gives you much more
but it's
information about the type of thing
typical
that you might add
viewpoints.
in. It's an absolutely
So what we have
fantastic
at the
thing
moment, and I'm not
to
sure
know
Yeah.
about.
we will.
So I say, you
all
know,
the
have how many
recommendations
days
to use
design, how many days
that,
material prep, masonry. So my masonry isn't the
the
whole, it's usually just a little bit, so I can list it in with my
But you
prep.
can see the location
But,
plan
you know,
here.
you might
as I
have to
flick
list
through
it,
these.
you know, separately. This is set
So
up
this
to
is on the
suit
public
me,
footpath
but
within
everybody
the
can
master plan.
change it to suit
Obviously,
them.
this is,
And then I say drawing and carving 45 letters by
forward to be
hand.
developed.
So
But what
I
we're doing
know,
is
one of the things I
identifying
know, because I've been doing it for
extent
so
of
many
the
years,
site
is how many letters I
in
can
all
cut a
these
day.
views,
And I price up
and,
for between 20 and
helping
25 letters a
people
day to
orientate
cut.
themselves by the
And,
pylons at the centre of the site.
you know, so if you don't know how many
I'll just
letters
go through
you
these.
can cut a day, because you'd probably be much slower than me. I think 20 is fair. You know, a client generally wouldn't argue with 20. I mean,
This is,
you know,
this
if
is
I'm
functional
working
molding, right?
uninterrupted, I could really comfortably cut
Let me just go
40 a
through these
day.
quickly because
But, you know, generally there's
we get bogged down in
interruptions
things
in
that
the
I don't think we
day
need
that
to,
don't
but,
have, you know,
Um,
and I know roughly how long
so the
it
next
takes me
view
to
is
draw
further
out
out here on this public
something.
footpath.
You know,
see
so
location plan.
you know, I'm not saying it's the
And again,
easiest thing to fill
we're
in, but it's a
analysing
really
that in
good
terms of
starting
the
point. And the more you do
approximate
it, the more
extent of the site.
experience you'll get. And then
The pylons
my
at the
time
centre,
fixing is a day,
Holiday
say, to
Inn,
fix. So that gives you 4
on Sixth Form
days, and then 4
College.
times the day rate.
I think
So
it's
that's your
interesting to
total
note
cost
in
before
this, the height of
materials.
these buildings.
And then if you add in, say,
And I
the
think
cost of the
thing we need to begin
headstone
to think through is
there,
just what,
and then
it's
I've
less
got,
important here than
I have a
what
guy
views,
who helps me
what,
fix, so you
it
can
would be
put
really
their
useful if
time
you
in.
used to
And
be
then I
able to
use a
dash in
memorial shoe to
the
fix. You can add in all of
approximate
it. So you've got a total
our
cost of
maximum development.
£2,760. I mean, these are just
And I
generic
guess in this
figures to
view,
get you
it's probably
going
not quite
and help
reassuring
you
because if you look at the height of the
understand.
pylons,
And so it's just
I
a
guess
really
our
nice
new,
way for
our new
me
building will be down
to
here somewhere.
understand
You
how
know,
to price a
maybe
job
even
up.
below
Now,
these
sometimes I send that to the client,
buildings,
but
which is
actually
a good thing.
that's not normally what I send
The
to
other
the
view we've
client.
taken
But I
is
still like to put all their details
on the
in here
main
for my
road coming
files
south,
and have that
and
record
again,
of pricing up
analysing
for
that
myself
in terms
based
of,
on a drawing.
the extent
If I
of the
do work
site.
for the Memorial Arts
Again,
Trust,
interesting thing
I have
about
to add
any
on
buildings
a
we might
10%
have,
cost on top
this
of
is the
that
Holiday
price
Inn.
there.
This is Worcester
And then I
Grange.
realised, you know, that all
presumably
these
gonna be
clients are
behind here
paying an extra
somewhere and not
20% for MBA, they
particularly
might as well pay it for me sometimes as well. So if I
and
think I
so
can put
on.
that 20%
I'll
on,
just
because
go
I would
on
have to do it for
to,
commission through the MBA, sometimes I stick that on as well.
I'll just flick through these and get a
But there's
sense of
always a
what we're
bit of,
doing.
you know, worrying
Um,
about putting a price out for me. And
This view is from the south.
I come to a figure and
There's
then
a
I
couple of views
panic.
here which we may
And
or
then
may
I
not
say to myself,
use,
Charlotte, just send
but
it.
I think it's a starter really in
Hit
terms
send,
of,
and then I hit send. And sometimes, you know, most of the time,
getting us to think
people
about
are
what
fine
we
about
think
it, but
about the
occasionally
horizon line
it doesn't come through. So I'm going to
and the
close
importance of
that
this ridge in the distance.
and open
You can
another
see the
window now.
pylons. Just zoom in a bit.
Okay, so
Well,
You can
I
see the
noticed
pylons
that
on
you
our site.
put on there that obviously if there's any revision to the scope,
see
you reserve the right to revise your
Curry's
prices.
PC World it was,
Yeah.
Do you ever
here,
put anything
the
on there
approximate
as
extent of site.
related to
I think
if there's
the-
times for
the-
client
Again,
approvals
this
and
is
if
a
they
less
go
sensitive view, I
through the
guess,
timeframe they've committed to,
because
that you
of
might
the existing buildings. I should say that
that generally doesn't
the
come up
views
in
all
my
taken
contract.
from,
I've never done anything like that, but I'm
public
always
footpaths where the
really
deep
honest
roads,
with my
just for
clients
convenience, but the theory
about
being that we're covering the
timescales.
most sensitive
I always say it's going to take
recreation views
ages
of
and
the
you can't
landscape.
rush me, and then we sort of go,
So I
okay
think we
then.
just need to be aware of what.
And I
we
never
think our
commit
new
to a
buildings are
timescale.
going to
You know, I've
do
never committed to a
to this-
timescale,
to this
other than
horizon line.
sometimes for public
It's not the most
commissions. But
sensitive
even then,
one.
because
And
getting stone is
there's
such an
another
arbitrary
interesting
thing
location,
in terms of waiting. I've waited 10, 11 months for a stone from a quarry, and then the next time I've ordered a similar thing, it's come in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So,
site further to the west, and you can see
you know,
the
I always
site
blame the
here,
quarry.
again, the pylons.
But anyway, I'm going to talk you through. So this is then what
Less
I say.
sensitive
So I
because
do
we've got,
what I call my
um,
estimate to help me work out the
existing
price.
buildings within the
Sometimes
view.
I send that to the
Again, I
client,
think
but
we need to
mostly I
just think
don't.
about what
I put dear such and
impact
such
of any
reference
you
job
have on this
description, and I
view.
put my estimate
It
for this
could be that we're
contract is a
saying
total
this view,
sum
the
of
site's not visible.
whatever it is.
But I've included
And then
it
I
for the
say
moment
it
because we
excludes.
can
So
see
if
the
it's for a
pylons,
headstone, I would say it excludes
we're
church
still moving
fees,
through our
or
master plan,
depending on the job, it might
process, but
exclude
again,
delivery and
interesting to
fixing. I might
batch
add that
on,
one separately.
reassure
And then I list
landscape
out
planning
everything it
officers,
does
batch on the height of the
include.
buildings in this
So it
sort of
includes
view.
the design consultation, and I start to
I
limit
think this is
everything here
probably
up to
typical
3 sets of
the
drawings. So sometimes, you know,
Western
stuff
views.
goes
There's
on
a couple
forever.
here, I think, are
So we've got 10 more
rather than all of them.
minutes. So I'll whip
But
through this.
In this view,
It means that if
Sorry,
the
I should have
design
paid
time
for
drags on, I
it.
can charge a bit more. And then I also
This
ring
is
fence a
the,
budget for materials, because in the past I
this is
have
the
been
down
caught
here to the
out where the
south-west
materials
side.
cost me more than I thought.
and again, I'm on
So
a
then
public
if it comes
footpath
to
here.
more than that, I can charge my client. So this
country
for me
road,
is really important,
which you can
budgeting,
see
ring fencing
the
things within your
horizon line
budget,
here.
so that if there's a difference, you can charge the
in
client. You
this
can drop
view,
that price as
You can
well,
just see the
Um,
all the in
you know, and sometimes I might do that if I'm way
and the
out.
pylons on
And
the
then it
side.
says drawing and carving, I'll say how many letters
see
by
that?
hand, painting the lettering, delivery.
So again,
and
I think
installation.
we, as a
And then I have this little bit at the bottom here
collective
about exactly what
strategy
you were looking
in
at.
terms of
And I
that
just,
approach
and then I have,
to
if those
planners,
details change and the scope of the work is
I
altered,
feel
I
we
reserve
just
the right to
need
revise
be
my cost in
aware
line
of
with the
where we
revised
think
work.
our new building
Any
heights will
further
be,
design and consultation work undertaken will
what
incur
our
a charge
story
if the commission is not completed.
around those
So that means that if people
they
ask you to do loads of
go
design
much
work and then
higher
decide
than
not to go ahead, you've told them
the
clearly
tree
that
line.
you'll be charging for your time
I
for
certainly
that.
think our planting strategy.
So what I
along
never
the
do is
A14
apologise for my
boundary is the right one,
price.
because it'll fill this
You
gap.
know, it's funny, you know, if you order anything from
you know,
anybody
so I
else,
think that's
you know,
quite
we've just
important
ordered some new
part of the strategy,
windows.
to
Nobody's
try
coming
and
back
keep,
to me and saying, oh, I'm really sorry, those
because
windows are really
what we are
expensive.
going to be able to say is
You
that
know,
actually, you know,
Well, they just
it's a
say this
good
is the
policy, we're
price.
gonna
So that's
stitch
now
this-
what I do. I say that's
gonna
the
stitch
price
this
and
gap
that's it. And then
along the
after that,
A14.
I send a contract. I'm not going to go through the
just
contract
take
really
you to
because
a
that's
few
too
o-
boring. But what I'd like you to do now, I'll just stop that
No, this
share.
would be, yeah, this would be
Pull
planting
you
to
all
be
up. So you can, we've got a couple of minutes. I think if you just put your mic on, if you want to say anything. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is if you have time, just, you know, have a look at some of those costs and see if they affect that sort of ballpark figure for your pricing for that job I sent off first time round, and see if it changes how you've priced that job up, or how you might price that job up. And then what we'll do is we'll come back and look at that towards the end of the day and see what you all
when you
think.
go into the valley.
Has anybody
you don't see the
got any
site,
other
but
questions?
Up on this high ground,
I'm just curious, it's
I met a
what is a memorial shoe?
resident in here when I stopped.
Oh, it's this wonderful thing.
The opportunity to tell me that in
that
no uncertain terms
It's
that
like
he
a
had seen
big
me without
concrete
this one
base.
tonight.
I've got a picture of one. And you dig a big hole and dump this big base in.
Which you
It's
can
like
see
a
again
big
here.
slab of concrete,
The two pylons.
and it's got two little drawer
In
pictures.
my mind, it tells us again about being concerned about height of buildings, but also the importance of that boundary landscape.
So, you know, using technology, it's like a concrete
Again,
base
if we
like
further
that.
around here
And then the
to
headstone.
northwest, it's like quite close. And I think again.
The headstone slots into it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And what it is, it's a
you
really
can see
secure way of fixing a
Thompson
headstone.
Morgan.
It's actually that the shoe that I use,
all
I
the
get from a
pylons,
woman
you
called
can see
Valerie
it's the
Leverett,
building,
who
so it's
designed it.
pretty urban
And it's the
anyway.
only
And you
NAM
can see our site here,
registered memorial fixing
organised
shoe.
behind this.
So if you
here.
do headstones, there's this thing where you sometimes have to be
in
NAM
my
or
mind,
BRAM
the
registered to
purpose of
fix
our
in a
landscape,
cemetery, and I'm not.
offer
But sometimes
here,
if I ring them up and say that's what I'm
reinforce-
using, they'll let you in anyway.
again, I think in this
And it's
view,
such
I
a
think
beautiful
the
fixing
management team
method,
sort of
you know.
understand the height of
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a
height of
discussion for
building.
today,
It's
really,
probably less
how to
important
do it,
because
but
it's
they
not on
come
the
in at
footpath.
about 50 quid a piece and we sell them
Whereas the
for
next one
60.
Is
Okay.
on a
And
private
it goes
footpath.
underground, presumably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it goes under the ground, you dig a big hole, you drop it in, and it's beautifully
again, you can
designed to
see,
help you level the stone
You can
really
see the
easy.
extent of the site.
You have to dig a bigger hole, and that
Able
takes
to
a little
locate
bit
it by
longer.
counting the
But
pylons
once
and
that
then go
base
back
is
to
in, your stone isn't going
these two
anywhere, and you
pylons
can
here
walk away from that
are
fixing
the ones
and
that are
never
their
worry.
site.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
levels
What
are
is
probably
NAM registered? What is NAM?
Oh, it's the National Association of Monumental Masons,
Horizon
you
line.
know.
Okay.
Interesting. The
Even
Orson
saying it
Grange
makes my heart
development
sink.
is in here. And because of the nature of the
When you
architecture
mentioned-
breaking the skyline, I thought it would.
When you
Well-
mentioned
It's
church
something to bear in
charges,
mind, that
is that to
either
do
master
with
plan is not yet
plots
breaking the
and
skyline.
that sort of thing, or what?
No,
is
what
that?
it is in a churchyard, in a C of E churchyard,
there is
every
one
church
final
has
view to the
got its
north I
own
went to
rules.
take.
The Church of England has rules and
Basically, it's
regulations,
sort
and each diocese has its own rules and
just a check.
regulations.
I'm not sure
And
it'll
to fix
include
a
it, but
memorial
it's
into a
the long
churchyard, you have to
distance,
meet those rules and
you can
regulations,
see
and
the
then you have to
pylon
pay an
side to
application
side.
fee that's about
Again,
£142
it is dash on our
for a
new
headstone.
at some point, just to see
And you
whether
can't
we'll see
fix
the site
anything
or
in a
not.
churchyard without this bit of
It's a public
paper in
footpath which
place.
crosses the field.
And you know,
I think in all of these. we're
depends
just
on the
trying to,
vicar as to how much they follow the rules and
reassure
regulations,
uh,
but you always
planners
have to pay the fee
that we're not
regardless.
foolishly,
And cemeteries
you know,
have a
we may
similar
be-
thing,
we may
and
be
their
breaking the
fees
standard,
range
but
from
we're not
anything
doing the
to
right
sort of
consideration.
100 quid up to,
And
in some
people
instances, I think there were
will-
one was
will
£400.
show that we're
So
okay with
I always let the
that.
client pay that. I never add it on
Well,
to,
we'll
you know,
get,
I never
standard.
paid out of my costs. I
Um,
always let the client pay that.
I think that's probably
Thank you.
where we
Yeah,
are.
thanks a lot.
in terms of,
We make
our
any adjustment to our
progress
prices
really.
if we're very inexperienced?
Sorry, say that
just go
again.
back to
Or should we make any adjustment to prices if we're very new to lettering or stone carving? So
Well, I
very-
think when you've finished your course at City and Guilds, I mean, my view is we all have to earn a living, and there's loads of rubbish people out there who are making a fantastic living. You know, so this idea that we have to make an
So,
adjustment,
taking
I
us
mean,
back to
I
the
can
site,
understand what
just to
you're
summarise
saying,
that,
but at the same time, I think you just have to go for it and never admit
know,
to your lack of
this is a
experience to
public
anybody,
footpath
because
to the
there's hundreds of people
to
who are
the,
shit, earning a fortune.
east of
You
the
know, go
site.
out there and tell everybody you're
Paul,
brilliant.
Kevin, I'm
Even
sort of
if you don't
wondering,
feel it, never, ever,
you know,
ever
about
tell
that
anybody you don't feel that
in
confident.
terms of,
You know, you've had 3 years or 2 years or
education
however many
side,
years of training at one of the best places to
how
learn
it
in the whole of
works.
the world.
I'm aware
You know,
of this,
think of it like that. Go out and shout about
master
it.
plan
And
layout
all those fears
here
and anxieties that you have, keep
seems-
to yourself
seems to
and
sort of
earn a living. Because
stop
what's
for
the
some
point of
reason
doing it if you can't
here.
earn a living?
but there's an implication that this continues through.
When I was
As
in
a-
City and Guilds a few
as a
years
sort
ago, I
of
was teaching there
second
in the stone,
footpath
and
and
then
then
I come and do a few
commercial
days
team,
lecturing.
whatever.
And they were showing a bunch of
Um,
people round who were looking to give some money. And this couple of old ladies came up to me and they said, "Oh, what are you doing?" So I said,
Yeah.
"I was teaching here." And they said, "Oh, how's it going?" And I said, "You know what? It's going brilliantly. It's going absolutely brilliantly. This is one of the best years I've ever taught. Everybody's just amazing," which they were. I wasn't telling a
I've taken a
lie.
picture here.
And they went
I'm taking a
away
picture
thinking
here
that
on
that
the
year was
basis that
fantastic. And they were. I
Somebody
didn't
might
say, "Oh,
well,
it's
what are
going
these
okay."
residents
You
looking
know,
at?
I bigged everybody up. It's much easier to big
So, I mean,
everybody
well,
else up. It's much
what's the
harder
reason
to
this
big
open space
yourself
that's
up.
new
And,
space?
you know, this person here tells me off for not doing it myself.
So,
But I'm much better at it than I used to be.
you know,
So big yourself
I'm
up.
not sure what we're saying at this
Anything
point,
else?
but, it seemed to me that we're on the right strategy
We done?
to the west. Whether we're asked to do
Okay,
any further
so,
additional planting,
thank
but it's an
you.
option for us, isn't
So
it,
let
if
me
we
have a look
needed
at my
to.
itinerary. So we're going to come back at 1
I
o'clock.
think some landform
And then we've got a nice easy ride
associated
with
with
another
this campaign would
PowerPoint
be
presentation. So you can sit
So
back and
using some
relax
cotton
for the
fill
next
to create
session.
a
And
slight
you know,
bond
keep making a list of any
will
questions for the
in
end
the
of
early
the
years.
end of the
And I
day,
think we
and
just have to
we'll
be
come back
aware
to
of,
that. Okay.
you know, what level
Thank
we're
you all.
saying these buildings are at.
Well,
Charlotte,
thanks.
can I just
Thank
ask?
you.
Oh yeah, go on.
Sorry,
You're right.
I'm coming late. Those documents, will you send us them?
I have them all ready, and I've got a draft email in place that I'm adding to as the day goes on with all the different references and resources. I've formatted those files specifically to send you all with my commission agreement as well.
Fabulous.
How dedicated is that?
Fabulous. you.
So I'll speak to you all after lunch.
Okay,
Great.
bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, thank you.
Not up to speed, and Google is very